I never asked for this assignment. That's the first thing you need to understand. But when your options are either another year drifting between neglected ministries or a 6-month gig that could wipe out your student debt, well, faith doesn't keep the lights on. The company was Thorn Expeditions. Never heard of them. The recruiter offered only the basics: spiritual advisor, part-time theologian, and general counselor. I'd provide emotional and moral support, keep a journal on the metaphysical effects of isolation, and help staff through spiritual concerns. Looking back, I should have realized something was off. Nobody hires a chaplain for a remote ice station unless they're expecting something to go very wrong. The flight to the polar site was the worst part. Or so I thought. A rattling twin-prop cargo plane flew us from the coast to a patch of snow that looked like every other frozen mile out there. I couldn't tell you how long the flight lasted. Time warps in that endless gray. When we landed, I expected tents or a few scattered trailers. What we found was a hatch in the ice, leading to a stairwell carved into the earth. The facility, named Aurora Station, was buried underground. The only visible surface marker was a steel trapdoor ringed by railings and a flag so tattered by wind, it looked like shredded cloth. Inside, the place was stark. Think Cold War bomb shelter without the charm. Bare concrete walls, stained with leaks nobody had fixed. Buzzing fluorescent lights flickered just enough to tint everything a queasy green. Hallways stretched like arteries in a dead thing, narrow, dim, and absolutely silent. The layout was simple. The west wing had our sleeping quarters, segregated by gender. Though there were a few joint rooms for couples, the bunks were narrow, the mattresses thin. Each had a shelf and a lonely overhead bulb. Across the hall sat the 2 lavatories. Stalls, showers, sinks, all windowless, just the soft mechanical hum of recycled air. At the center was the compound's heart, the rec room. It had a warped pool table, a scuffed bar, and couches that smelled like mildew and stale smoke. The walls were fake wood paneling, ugly and dated, like a basement no one had cared about since 1978. But people gathered there, trying to keep up appearances, pretending we were normal. There was also the observation deck, though that's generous. A steel ladder led up a vertical shaft into a narrow glass dome above the ice. From up there, you could see the snow stretching forever. Watch the wind drag itself across the white. But it was brutally cold, so nobody stayed more than a few minutes. I climbed up there once, my first day. Regretted it instantly. The silence wasn't peaceful, it was absolute. Like the world had ended, and only the wind remained to grieve. There were 12 of us. Hey? That shocked me. These expeditions usually ran light, 6, maybe 8 crew. But here we were, a full dozen, pulled from wildly different fields. It didn't make sense. Dr. Malik was the station physician. Kind man, older, with soft eyes and a quiet way of moving. He practiced Buddhist meditation and lit incense in the med bay. I often joined him. Then there was Aaron, the physicist. Tall, wiry, sharp-tongued. He called me a Father Tom, no matter how often I told him I wasn't Catholic. Despite that, we got along. He needed a sounding board, and I needed someone who could crack a joke without sounding like he might cry. The geologists were a British couple, Gregory and Helen. Reserved and formal. Helen's laugh sounded like glass shattering. Fast and brittle. Gregory barely spoke above a whisper. Regina, our biologist, was brilliant and distant. She moved like she had somewhere better to be. Even in the rec room, she wore her lab coat. Her eyes darted constantly, like she was logging every detail. The maintenance crew was 3 tough men in their 30s. Heavy coats, heavier boots, and expressions carved by years of hard winters. They kept things functional. Repaired systems, ran the snow rover, fixed anything with wires or wheels. One of them, Gavin, rarely spoke. He wore the same orange hoodie each day and spent most of his time alone, either haunting the rec room or silently pacing the halls. Then there were the therapists. Sylvia was warm and maternal, always clutching a clipboard. Victor, in contrast, was a shadow, tall, hollow, and so silent he seemed to absorb sound. I never saw him smile. He watched us like we were part of some long experiment. And then there was me, Thomas O'Hara, Protestant minister, spiritual advisor, utterly out of place, and running out of choices. I spent the first week easing in, helping with daily tasks, offering an ear when someone seemed off. The geologists asked about the spiritual impact of disturbing untouched land. Regina once asked if animals had souls. Even Aaron, the die-hard atheist, eventually softened. We shared whiskey, debated theology, and listened to gospel music with ironic flair. I remember when I first felt something was wrong. I was walking the corridor between the rec room and med bay. It was late. Around 1 a.m., the lights flickered. I stopped to adjust my scarf, and I heard it. A whisper. Faint, barely there, but real. It said something like a name. Maybe mine. I spun around. The hall was empty. I stood there, waiting, but only heard the low hum of ventilation and a distant drip from an overhead pipe. I told no one. I just started wearing headphones during walks. Music helped. Anything to fight the silence. Our days followed a rigid schedule, work from 7 to 5, 6 days a week. Sundays were technically for rest, but nobody really did. We played cards, drank, watched whatever movies we downloaded before arriving. Internet access was satellite-based and agonizingly slow, but it worked, barely. Each week, a supply plane arrived. Food, fuel, medicine, small comforts like smokes or whiskey. It never stayed long. Just dropped the cargo and vanished. That drop was our lifeline. We also had weekly treks to the dig site, a massive pit several miles out, discovered by the last crew. Only trained staff went, the geologists, Regina, and a maintenance tech. They'd leave early in the rover and return late, quiet, tired. I assumed it was fatigue. I didn't realize the cracks had already started. Soon, the station didn't feel like a base. It felt like a tomb. I stayed busy, talked to people, tried to boost morale, wrote reflections on faith under pressure. But as time passed, I noticed something worse than whispers or cold. This place didn't just confine you. It changed you. And it already was. It began the third Sunday. I remember because we'd just eaten lukewarm stew and a dry roll. I was heading back to my room with Regina. She wasn't talkative but often lingered near me after meals. Maybe for comfort, or maybe it made her feel human again in this frozen coffin. We passed Gavin in the hall, same hoodie, hood up, face hidden. He nodded slowly. I nodded back. Regina didn't. The next morning came the first real shift. A soft hum filled the air, faint and directionless. I thought it was heating interference, but during our coffee break, I asked Sylvia. She looked puzzled, said she hadn't noticed anything. I almost dismissed it, but later that day, Aaron found me in the rec room. Thomas, he said, lowering his voice. When's the last time you slept through the night? I shrugged. A week? Maybe more. Same, he muttered, tugging at his collar. Keep waking at exactly 3:11 a.m. No dream, just awake. It's wrong. I agreed. I told him to track it, treat it like science. That helped calm him, but the real change came on a Wednesday. That day's field crew was different. Regina, the geologists, and one maintenance guy, Null. They left early in the snow rover. I watched them from the glass dome until the white swallowed them. Then I returned to work. Journaling, counseling, reading with Dr. Malik in the med bay. He'd begun lighting sandalwood incense in the vents, claiming it brought clarity. By dusk, the sun dipped below the ice, casting long shadows. I was in the rec room playing pool with Sylvia when the main door burst open. Cold wind and frost howled in. Regina stumbled inside, wide-eyed and trembling. Her coat was torn. Helen followed, dragging a crate. Gregory was last. Ashen, lips pale. Null wasn't with them. What happened? Sylvia asked, setting down her cue stick. Regina collapsed onto a couch, barely breathing. Helen muttered something and rushed off, Gregory trailing her like a loose thread. I moved to follow, but Sylvia grabbed my arm. Wait, she whispered. Let's hear her out. We sat near Regina. Minutes passed before she spoke. We got there early, she whispered. The dig looked the same, just wind and snow. We checked the perimeter, nothing odd. Then Helen found something. I leaned in. What was it? A box, she said, eyes shut. Old metal, frosted oak. About 3 feet long. Took us an hour to dig it up. Looked like a war relic. Rusty, strange markings. Not military. Nothing familiar. What happened to Null? I asked. She bit her lip. He was watching the rover. We signaled him to lift the box. He didn't respond. Thought the radio was down. We climbed out. The rover was there, doors open, engine running, but he was gone. She paused, shivering. No footprints, no tracks, just the rover, and a message. A message? I asked, her eyes locked with mine. One word etched in the snow, leave. My throat dried. I glanced at Sylvia, who folded her arms tightly. We panicked, Regina continued. Gregory tried to drive us back. Steering was stiff. We hit something on the way. Left the rover a half-mile out. Carried the box the rest. She stared at the floor. It's in storage now. Dr. Malik arrived minutes later. Someone had called him. He checked her vitals and whispered something to Sylvia about shock. We helped Regina to her room. She didn't speak again that night. That was the first time I heard the whisper clearly. Not in the hallway. In my room, near my bed. I sat up, heart pounding, pulled off my headphones. The stillness. Then, my name. I lay back down and cranked the volume. Gospel hymns. Anything to drown it out. The next morning, a meeting was called. Everyone gathered, except Null, still missing, and Victor. He never showed. Sylvia stayed silent. Dr. Malika led. We need to discuss the box. It sat at the front on a rolling cart, 3 feet long, rusted, no hinges or locks, just sealed steel. Gavin stood at the back, hoodie stained with grease, arms crossed, silent. What is it? Aaron asked. A relic? No idea, Gregory replied. We couldn't open it. It's sealed tight. Then why bring it back? Helen snapped. Because of the message, Gregory said. The room fell quiet. Sylvia finally spoke. We shouldn't open it. Everyone turned. Not yet, she added. Not until we understand more. Something's happening. We all feel it. We're being watched. Dr. Malik nodded. I agree. Until Null is found, the box waits. We organize a search. That afternoon, a team left. Aaron, Gavin, and Gregory. They took the snowmobile. No storm yet. Visibility fair. I stayed behind helping Dr. Malik inventory the med bay. Regina sat alone in the rec room, staring at a blank TV screen. Helen paced. Sylvia, he'd read from a torn psychology text underlining most pages. The search party came back near dusk. No Noel, no clues, no trace. As if he'd never existed. But the rover remained. They brought it in. That night, the winds rose, a blizzard, the kind that pounded the hatch above like angry gods. The lights dimmed. The halls grew darker. The whispers louder. Gavin lingered in the rec room, nursing a bourbon bottle. I passed him on the way to my quarters. He didn't speak, just lifted the bottle slightly, then returned to silence. I lay awake, staring up, listening to whined and groaning pipes. Then it came again. Not a whisper this time. A name, Noel, repeated. Someone, or something, calling. But no one was there. Silent stretches can gnaw at your mind's edge. Days after Noel vanished, the base no longer felt like shelter. It felt like purgatory. Something had shifted. Not in the air or cold, but in us. In our posture, in our stares. We no longer finished thoughts. Conversations clipped. People murmured to themselves, stared too long at walls, stayed isolated. The lights flickered uncertainly. We didn't open the box. That was the rule. It sat in the rec room beneath a tarp like a corpse. Untouched. Unexamined. We walked around it in wide circles. Still, it felt like it watched. Or maybe not the box. Maybe something inside it wanted out. Gavin started sleeping in there, curled on a frayed couch. Bourbon close. Bourbon close. He barely spoke, and when he did, his words made no sense. Radio static, voices beneath the floor. One night, he pointed up and whispered, There's something wrong with the snow. 2 nights later, Aaron found me. Pale, hunched, eyes bloodshot. I saw him, he said. Who? I asked. Unaware, I stared. Where? In my quarters? He whispered. He was in the corner. Still. Not breathing, just standing. When he turned on the light, Noel vanished. But the corner was wet from snow. He shook his head. From something else. Aaron wasn't one to lie about ghosts. If he was scared, something serious had happened. Dr. Malik arranged group dinners to help morale, but no one ate much. Regina, the biologist, hadn't spoken since returning from the dig. She sat far down the table, arms crossed, eyes glued to the floor like she could will it to open and take her. Helen and Gregory barely left their quarters, and when they did, it wasn't together. Then Sylvia began taking notes in a red leather journal she carried everywhere. I saw a page once. No words, no runes. Just strange, looping sigils. Staring too long made my eyes sting. Victor, the second therapist, vanished. No one had seen him for days. We assumed he was just hiding out, sleeping through the storm, maybe sick. But when Dr. Malik and I pried open his door with a screwdriver, the room was completely empty. The bed made. The closet bare. Not a single footprint. It was like he'd never been there. Malik said nothing, just walked away and shut the door. Later, he asked me if I believed in a spiritual infection. I had no reply. 3 days into the storm, the power died. No warning, just darkness. We gathered in the rec room, candles flickering, wind shrieking outside like it wanted in. I've had enough, Helen said, tense. I'm leaving. I don't care about contracts or findings or boxes. And go where? Aaron muttered from a shadowy corner. You think the cold's worse than this? Helen stood shaking. Yes, yes, I do. That night, the dream started, for all of us. At first, flickers, a shadow in the corridor, a child's laugh behind a locked door. I dreamt I stood outside in the storm, no gear, watching the station burn. Not with fire, but with blackness rising like smoke. Inside, someone stood in the observation deck, watching me, just watching. Next morning, Gregory was gone. Helen collapsed, sobbing, screaming until her voice broke, then curling on the floor. I tried to help, but she recoiled like my hand burned. Gregory's coat was found just beyond the hatch. It had been opened overnight. No one admitted to it. No tracks. Wind had erased the signs. Sylvia snapped next. She stormed into the cafeteria at breakfast, hair wild, eyes wide. Victor isn't gone, she declared. He's inside the walls, listening, waiting. Aaron stood. You're sick, Sylvia. You know, she said softly. I'm awake. You all will be. That was the day we voted. To open the box, not unanimous. Dr. Malik abstained. I objected. But desperation is persuasive. We needed logic, reason, structure, something to explain it. Ruddy, the last maintenance worker, got tools. It took hours. The box had been welded shut. Crowbars, torches, drills, nothing easy. Eventually, we forced it open. Inside, nothing helpful. A spool of rough string, shattered glass, a pouch of salt, a bunch of feathers, that's it. The disappointment was sharp, but short. When Ruddy reached for the string, wind burst through the rec room. Lights flashed, candles died. For a heartbeat, we all saw our breath, though the room wasn't cold. Then came the voice. Not loud, not screaming. Whispers, but not from our rooms or the halls. From here, from the floor, from the walls. Aaron backed away, muttering in Hebrew. When I grabbed his arm, he turned pale. You heard it, didn't you? Huh. What? A duck, he whispered. It meant nothing. Not then, but the way he said it, like poison, made it stick in my spine. It's not a box, he said. It's a cage. That night, the dreams returned, but they weren't dreams. I woke to scratches on the inside of my door. Deep. Too high for hands, too wide for fingers. I didn't open it. I sat on the bed, listening until the sound faded. I heard Gavin laughing. Gavin never laughed. After that, I stopped sleeping. I'd lie there, blanket up to my chin, ears sharp to every creak. The walls had become alive. They breathed. They wept. They moved. Once I heard crying through the vent. I counted every drop of water falling from the ceiling. Drip, 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 drip. Time stopped existing. Dr. Malik found me at dawn in the cafeteria, hunched over cold coffee. He looked worn, hollow. We need to leave, he said. I nodded. Even if the storm ends, where do we go? Anywhere but here. Later, power failed again. Total blackout. We moved with lanterns and headlamps. Light danced like fireflies. But silence. Silence was worse than the dark. At least in darkness, you could pretend you were somewhere else. The box stayed uncovered now. Untouched, but present. Watching. Reddy swore it changed. Markings deeper, like etched from within. We did a count. 6 of us left, me. Dr. Malik, barely therein. Silent Helen. Regina, who tiptoed like she feared waking something. And Reddy. Sylvia had vanished. Her journal remained, left open to a page scribbled in red ink. One word, over and over, over and over. Orlando, but we didn't know who that was. Regina had begun muttering to herself, not in English, not in any tongue I knew, just constant murmurs. Rudy tried to stop her once. She leaned in and whispered to him. He didn't sleep that night, just sat with a kitchen knife, eyes darting. Rudy disappeared next. No sounds, no signs, no signs, just gone. Aaron found the kitchen knife, snapped in half outside his door. Helen started humming an old rhyme none of us recognized. She wouldn't stop, no matter what we said. She just sat in the hall, eyes closed, rocking. The storm eased. But by then, it didn't matter. It didn't matter. Even if we escaped, something would come with us, something internal. You can't outrun a voice in your head. Aaron and I tried to fix the satellite uplink. We climbed to the deck, wind biting. No signal, no feedback, nothing. Aaron laughed midway through. Not madness, not humor, just dead sound. I figured it out, he said. It's not the place, it's us. We let it in. What? I asked. Oh, the box wasn't a lock, it was bait. This place feeds on belief, fear, guilt. That's why you're here, Thomas. You believe. It picked you. I didn't argue, not because I agreed, but because part of me feared he was right. That night, Helen screamed. We ran to her room. Door open, blood on the walls, just streaks like a hand dragged. But she was gone. The trail stopped at the locked storage bay. Dr. Malik blocked us. Not like blocked us. She chose, he said softly. We met in the med bay. 4 left. Regina finally spoke. They're watching, she whispered. Through the cracks, in the ice. They were our faces. Dr. Malik handed me a paper. I found it in a drawer, yellowed, ink fading. It read, if you're reading this, the cycle's begun. Station is compromised. Don't trust anyone, especially the sane. Get out, or burn it down. Unsigned. Next day, Aaron vanished. No blood, just silence. His bed still warm. Now there were 3. Me, Regina, Malik. We barricaded the cafeteria, burned furniture for heat. It didn't help. Cold seeped from within. That night, I dreamed of Aaron, in snow, eyes black. Pointed. I turned. The station loomed, twisted. Inside, shadows moved. I woke. Malik was gone. Regina didn't flinch. She stared at the door, murmuring. I think I'm next, she said. You're not, I told her. She smiled sadly. This place doesn't let anyone leave clean. Next morning, I found her coat on the ladder to the deck. Hatch open. Wind howling. I climbed up. Snow. Endless white. One trail of footprints. Alone, I went back to the office. Sat at the desk. Stared at the wall. Hours passed. Then I saw the mirror. My eyes darker. Not tired. Hollow. Behind me, someone stood. I turned. Nothing. I smashed the mirror. No echo. From the glass, a paper drifted down. Scribbled in shaky writing. Don't trust the orange. I haven't seen Gavin in days, but now I'm questioning if he ever left, or if he ever existed. I've lost track of how long I've been alone. The clock stopped during the blackout, and my watch followed, refusing to move another tick. The only way to track time now was the shortening of emergency candles and the ache of hunger. I rationed what I had: crackers, instant soup, canned meat that expired 2 years ago, but probably never tasted better. Cold meals, colder thoughts. Sometimes I thought I'd gone deaf. Hours passed where the station was so silent, so still, I couldn't even hear my pulse. Then the opposite. A bang in the vents, a laugh from an empty hall, footsteps that vanished when I turned around. It was worse than madness. Madness implies detachment from reality. This felt like reality had warped itself, folded inward and turned into something unrecognizable. Chuati nightclub. Then I found the envelope. It was hidden in a vent in the office I had claimed as mine. I removed the cover just to kill time, to distract myself from the sound of my breathing. Inside was a letter, one printed page on pristine white paper untouched by the mold and damp that had taken the rest of the base. There was a logo, Thorn Industries, confidential, Project Essex, evaluation protocol. All staff were to remain unaware of the facility's true function until the debriefing. The Aurora base wasn't a research outpost. It was a sealed environment to study induced group psychosis. Neural manipulation through exposure and stress. Test agents released via the air systems. B7, a hallucinogenic inhalant. V9, an emotional destabilizer. Modified ergot derivatives for psychoactive control. Results were gathered through observation and written logs by subject 2, selected for spiritual leanings and mental durability. My initials, subject 2. I dropped the paper. My stomach flipped. I dry heaved into the waste bin. The acid and rancid rations burned my throat. They knew. They picked me. This wasn't a noble mission. It was a test tube of terror. They'd been watching the whole time. The box. The missing people. The voices. It wasn't all paranormal. It didn't have to be. They built this nightmare. Dosed us. Watched us spiral. But that didn't explain everything. No science explained Gavin. He came back the night I found the file. I was curled up in a corner of the cafeteria, gripping a dying lantern. The heater had long since gone cold. My toes were numb. My mind was fraying. Kehos were numb. My mind was fraying. Then I heard a knock, not on a door or wall, but the floor. 3 soft taps, then his voice. You never asked the right questions, Thomas. I bolted upright, the lantern shaking in my hands. His voice sounded familiar, wrong. It echoed like it wasn't in the room, but inside my head, bouncing behind my eyes. I watched you pray, it said. Morning and night, you thought it helped. I stood up. Weak, heart pounding. Where are you? I asked. A pause. I'm in the quiet places, in the gaps between thoughts. You let me in when you doubted. Then the lantern died. I was alone. The next day, I tore through the base, room after room. Tables flipped, drawers gutted, shelves yanked down. I found hidden mics, cameras and ceiling panels. All of it wired to a terminal in Victor's office. The therapist had never been one. He was an observer. Or worse, the computer confirmed it. Logs, videos, reports dated before we arrived. My name was the main subject. Others had roles. Aaron, control. Regina, instability monitor. Gavin had no role. Just a symbol, a black spiral hand drawn across the file. The file name was corrupted. No content, no explanation. That night, I saw it again, behind the dartboard in the rec room. Black paint. Fresh. I stared. Whispers returned. Not voices, just thoughts that weren't mine. Take the axe. Burn the medbay. Climb. Jump. I collapsed, screaming until my throat cracked. The whispers faded, but they'd come back. Next morning, I found another note. Freezer door. Thick red ink. Not blood, just ink probably. Don't let him talk. If he talks, he spreads. No name. No reason. I assumed it meant Gavin, or the thing pretending to be. I talked to myself to drown the whispers, reciting scripture, listing names from the mission, trying to remember their real voices. Helen, Gregory, Sylvia, Regina, Aaron, Dr. Malik. Even Victor I tried to pinpoint when they changed. Maybe they never did. Maybe I did. Maybe the whole experiment was to test when a soul snaps, and maybe I already had. I found the flare gun in a supply closet. Still loaded. Still waiting. Still waiting. I just held it thinking how silence would feel. The final burst of light. Then I found it, half-burned paper behind the heating unit, scorched edges, but the photo was intact. 12 people smiling in front of the hatch. Winter gear, in the center, a short man with a parka and a goatee, Orlando. One figure circled in red ink. Hoodie, skinny frame, head tilted. Didn't fit. Didn't fit. Next to it, one word. Me. Below the photo. If you found this, I hope you didn't open the box. It's not a vessel. It's a beacon. They lied. The drugs are real, but they're not enough. The site itself is a fracture. Something bleeds through. It feeds on belief, on fear. That's why you're here. Not to study, to feed it. I sat for a long time. Then I stopped shaking. I knew what I had to do. I climbed to the observation deck. The storm had settled. For once, I could see the horizon. And in the distance, a shape. A plane. Whether it was real or not didn't matter. I had a flare. I had one chance to be seen. The sky through the dome didn't look real. Too blue, too still, like it was painted. The wind was a low moan, like breath through a door. The flare gun felt heavier now, resting in my lap. I sat cross-legged, staring at the shape in the snow. It didn't move. It didn't move. Either it landed, or it wasn't real. I no longer cared. My fingers were numb. My throat was raw from recycled air. I hadn't seen anyone in. Time had collapsed. A loop tightening around the station. Still, I waited. Part of me believed the world might remember I existed. When I finally fired, the flare cracked like thunder, a red streak across white. I stood shivering, watching it fade. The silence that followed was unbearable. No answer. No change. I climbed down the ladder. Each rung a reminder this place had no bottom. Just deeper traps. Past the rec room, the box was still there. Lid open like a gaping mouth. Empty, but colder. Not temperature. Presence. Like it was listening now. Not just watching. I skipped the cafeteria. Too much blood. Too many ghosts. I wandered therapy rooms, dorms, the destroyed med. Each room felt frozen in time. Notes half written. Chairs tipped. Clothes neatly folded beside beds no one returned to. I ended in Sylvia's room. The red journal was gone. In its place, one page on the pillow. He speaks in Don't let him finish a sentence. The mirror was cracked. My reflection, unfamiliar, darker eyes, chapped lips, rough beard. But it was my expression that chilled me, hollow, resigned. Then the power came back. Lights flickered, buzzed, then stayed. The systems hummed. A cue in a play I hadn't known I was in. Back in the main hall, I saw footprints fresh, still wet. They led from the rec room to the locked storage. I followed. The door was open. The backup terminal glowed. And there was Gavin, same hoodie, same posture. I didn't speak, just watched. He turned. Smiled. You were supposed to leave? Ethan swam, threatening Wisconsin, because the threshold I gripped the flare gun. What are you? What's left when belief dies? You let me in when you were afraid. You're not real. That's what they all say. Before they join, I pulled the trigger. The flare passed through him. No blood, no scream. He vanished. Smoke filled the hall. The base twisted, corridors looping, doors appearing where none had been. Panicked, I ran, until I ended in the chapel, the only room unchanged. My Bible was still there. Psalms open. I knelt not to pray, to feel the floor. Then alarm.